Welcome back to State of the Stallions. This is your host, Luke Miller, here to break down an upcoming game against the Memphis Showboats in this Week 6 USFL Conference matchup with your Birmingham Stallions. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about some other things going on around the USFL. And believe it or not, we're at that halfway point. So we're going to kind of look back over the first half of the season and talk about how the Stallions have been doing so far. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the show.
Here we go. Hey, giddy up on three. 1, 2, 3. Giddy up.
You can feel the buzz when you're around this city. People have fallen in love with the Birmingham Stallions. Here we go. We're getting a little juice going.
USFL championship.
So we're going to jump right in, and the way I want to start the show this week is actually do a little bit of looking back over the first half of the season, sort of talk about some standout players, how the Stallions have done so far. And one of the things I want to do to start is actually give a quick update on my star count for players this season. So if you've been following along, after each game, I've been giving out stars. I've had a 3-star player of the game, a 2-star player of the game, and a 1-star player of the game, 3-star being the one with the best performance, and sort of working your way down. And I've been tallying those up, but I've wanted to sort of give an update on the numbers, but I have failed to work it into a previous episode. So since we're at the halfway point, I thought this would be a great time to just give a quick update on sort of where we stand as far as how many stars guys have earned over the course of the first half of the season. So coming in at number 1 with 6 stars is quarterback Adrian Martinez. I put a little 2 in parentheses there, which just goes to show how many games that he has played in where he earned stars. Obviously, he's played more than 2 games, but two games he earned stars. He had 2 3-star performances in 2 games that he started, and so he's got the most stars right now at 6. And then kind of a drop off from there. I actually have a couple guys at 3 stars. So running back Ricky Person Jr., defensive tackles Carlos Davis and Jordan Thompson, and then we've got Taco Charlton, Mark Gilbert, and Ramiz Ahmed all have 3 stars. A couple of those guys that's come from, 1-star performance and a 2-star performance, kind of combining them. And then a couple guys that's come from just 1 3-star performance. And then at 2 stars, I've got Matt Corral, which was 2 1-star games, Kiava Tizino and Chris Blewett, who both had a 2-star game apiece. And then got a couple guys with 1 star. So Larry Roundtree III, Deion Kane, Dondre Tillman, and Jonathan Garvin. So that's where we stand at this point of the season. Just I know some people might have been interested in that and want to kind of know where we're at. But Adrian Martinez sits atop the stars leaderboard, and it'll be interesting to see with the second half of the season how things change or don't change. So related to that, I wanted to also kind of give out some midseason awards for the team. Obviously, as a team, that I think the team's played collectively fantastic. I think Skip Holtz is the front runner for Coach of the Year. John Chavis's defense has been outstanding. We've had really good special teams. Obviously, we're 5-0. Can't really complain about that. Had a couple close games, but in a league with the kind of parity that this league has, that's probably to be expected, and we were able to pull them out. So that says a lot about this team too. So as far as the team goes, there's a lot of praise to go around, but I also wanted to recognize some individuals who had some outstanding performances this season thus far. And I could have recognized a lot more guys than I did because, again, so many players on the team have been playing well, but wanted to give out my midseason awards, and I'll do this again at the end of the year. And again, it'll be interesting to compare what's similar, what's different. But starting off with my MVP thus far this season for the Stallions, I've actually got to go with defensive tackle Carlos Davis. Carlos is the twin brother of Khalil Davis, former Stallions defensive tackle, who's now with the Houston Texans. And he's just been a huge addition for us, in my opinion. He's got 19 tackles, which is 5th on the team, first among all defensive linemen on the team. 3 tackles for loss, which is tied for 2nd on the team. He's got 6 sacks, which is the most, not just on the Stallions, but in the entire UFL. He's also got 17 quarterback pressures, which is 3rd on the team behind a couple defensive ends and Dondre Tillman and Jonathan Garvin. And he's got 1 forced fumble. And I think what's so impressive is you got to remember Carlos Davis is putting up these numbers as an interior defensive lineman, right? It's not uncommon to see a guy come off the edge and rack up maybe a lot of stats, a lot of eye-popping numbers, but he's doing all of this from the inside where he's getting double-teamed or he's getting blocked, by sometimes 1 or more guys. And so it gets crowded in there. And the fact that he's been able to get to the quarterback, to get that many tackles, to get that many pressures and all those kinds of things, despite the fact that he's playing inside, I think is just incredibly impressive. And I think, the defensive line has been one of, if not the strongest unit on this team. And he's been, I think, the best player on the defensive line. And that says a lot because the other guys have been incredible too. But he would be my MVP. And then my offensive player of the year would have to be running back Ricky Person Jr. I think we've all been um, just really impressed with what he's done this year in terms of his speed, his agility, his elusiveness, his power. He's really a complete running back, and I don't expect that he'll be with us. Well, obviously you never know what's going to happen in the NFL, but I don't expect he'll be on our roster in the fall. I think he's going to be with an NFL team, and hopefully that works out and he gets to stick in the league. And if not, obviously we're welcome back with open arms. But he's got 164 rush yards this season, which is second on the team behind Martinez. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns, which is puts him at first in the entire UFL and puts him at first in the entire UFL for scoring. He's got more touchdowns than any other receiver, running back player like that. And then he's also got 135 receiving yards, which is third on the team as well for the Stallions. So not only has he been a great running back for us, he's actually been a really fantastic pass catcher out of the backfield. And he's actually worked his way into that sort of a RB1 spot and eclipsed CJ Mirabal, I think, heading into this latter half of the season. So he's been amazing. Can't say enough good things about him. And it was an easy choice. As good as some other players have been, it was an easy choice for me to give him Offensive Player of the Year thus far. Defensive Player of the Year, this one was really tough for me because there were so many guys that I felt like really were eligible and qualified to win this. But when it all came down to it, the guy I decided to go with was actually safety Kenny Robinson Jr. And the reason why was when you look at Kenny's numbers, when you watch the game film or things like that, I don't think necessarily he's going to maybe pop out at you first, like maybe some other guys. But when you look at his game and what he's done, there's really no weaknesses. He has been huge both in stopping the run and in covering the pass. As far as the run, he's got 16 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, only 1 missed tackles thus far this year. And when he tackles, I mean, he brings the hammer. He's had some huge plays for us in space, some great open field tackles, and that's been fantastic for us to have from that safety spot. And then in coverage, he's been great too. He's only given up 1 reception this season, according to Pro Football Focus. Only given up 1 reception on 5 targets. So only 20% of passes are being completed when thrown his way. And that 1 completion that he gave up went for a negative 2-yard gain. So thus far, he's given up 1 catch for negative 2 yards in 5 games, which is incredible. He has 4 pass breakups. So the other times when the ball is being thrown his way, if it's only 1 has been caught, the other 4 have been deflected. He's got 1 forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery. So not only has he been great in the run and in the pass, he just has a nose for the ball. He's forcing fumbles, recovering fumbles, making plays. He's just one of those guys that I think has been a huge piece for us. And I knew he would be, bringing him in and knowing his story and seeing him play in college and the XFL and the NFL. He's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic leader. He brings a ton of energy and juice to the back end. I think him and JoJo Tillery back there, I mean, that's 2 guys that are just huge for the culture of the defense and just bring the hammer every time they come up and make a play and are great in coverage. And so he's played more snaps than I think any other defensive player on the Stallions team. He's been out on the field a lot, and he just hasn't really made any mistakes. I think there was a couple other guys that I was also seriously considering for Defensive Player of the Year, but some of them, they had some really, really good games, but then they also had maybe some games where they had several mistakes or several sort of miscues, or they had one aspect of their game that was really strong, but another aspect of their game that wasn't quite so strong. Whereas Kenny, I just felt like, yeah, maybe he didn't have some of the same numbers as some of the other guys, but he just has no weaknesses, I feel like, in his game right now, and he's just been dominant. And so decided to go with him, but again, there were several other guys that were very worthy of that award. For Special Teams Player of the Year, I got to go with Amari Rogers. He's got 174 punt return yards right now, which is by far the best in the UFL. The next closest person has 100 yards, so he's almost doubled that. And he's been great. I mean, he's got like over 12, I think, yards per punt return. I think 5 punt returns have gone for at least 15 yards. So he's been fantastic in sort of flipping the field for us, and that's been huge. My breakout star of the year so far has to be Adrian Martinez. I mean, I don't have to say much, I think, for us to understand that one. We've seen what he can do, and I think the reason I gave him this breakout star award is because I don't think a lot of us saw it coming, or at least maybe I should just speak for myself. But I mean, I think a lot of people coming into the season, Matt Corral was kind of the bigger name, the guy that everybody was ready to see. I think Matt's played really well, but there's just no denying how fantastic Adrian has been. And not that anybody thought he wasn't a good quarterback, but I don't think anybody expected him to be as dominant as he has been, both with his arm and his legs. We knew, again, I've said this before, we knew what he could do with his legs, but the way that he's been just sort of pinpoint accuracy with his arm, move the ball down the field has been really impressive. He's got over 600 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, over 300 rushing yards and a touchdown, only one interception. And that was kind of on an errant throw in week one. I mean, it's been several weeks since then. So for the most part, I think he has a fumble too, but for the most part, he's done a good job, I think, protecting the football. And again, if you go back and watch the games that he started and played, there's just not a lot you can say to critique what he's done. He's really been excellent, and unsurprisingly, it seems like he's kind of maybe locked up the QB1 role for the foreseeable future. And then my most improved player, I've actually got to go with center Cole Schneider. Cole was with the team last year, so I was kind of looking at guys that were with the team last year for this award. But you know, Cole was with the team last year. He was a great player for us. Kind of rotated in on the offensive line at center and at guard. Never really started much, maybe a game or two here or there, but wasn't a regular starter for us. He was kind of Cole Cabral's backup. But in training camp, those two guys were both back, and Cole Schneider actually beat Cole Cabral out for the starting job, and they ended up, cutting the other Cole, and he's now with the Michigan Panthers. But I thought that said volumes about what they think about Cole and sort of the progress he's made and over the course of this past season in an off season. Spent some time with Green Bay this past NFL season, and he's been fantastic. I mean, they when they moved on from Cole Cabral, they basically let go the other center we had on the roster. So we really only have one sort of true center on the roster. Zach Johnson played center when Cole was hurt a couple of weeks ago, but that's not his primary position by any means. He's really more of a guard. So Cole Schneider is really, I mean, they pretty much said, hey, we're getting rid of everybody. It's just you. You are a guy. You are a center, and he's been, I think, been excellent. He's played really well. He's playing every snap in the games that he's in at center. When he sat out a couple weeks ago, I felt like the offensive line did not look as good without him sort of, quarterbacking it from the front there. And so I think he's been huge for us. And I think, again, it's not to say he wasn't a fantastic player last year, but just the role he's taken on for us, I think he's had a huge jump in what he means to this team since last season. And then lastly, my biggest midseason addition. We really haven't had many additions to the team so far. Luckily, the Stallions have been mostly injury free and haven't had any, too many like major issues like they kind of did last year early on in the year. But I've got to go with Ramiz Ahmed. Of course, I'm still kind of saddened that we had to bring him in because of the injury to Chris Blewett. And Chris Blewett, I thought, was off to a great start and really wanted to see what he could do with a full sort of season of work. But opportunity knocks, and Ramiz came in, and again, the rest is history. We all know what happened. He came in, had that 4-for-4 game with field goals, with a game-winning field goal, which was incredible on a short week of practice. He went 2 for 3 last week, which is not bad. The one that he missed was terrible wind conditions, and it was a long field goal right there before half. So I mean, it would have been awesome if he made it, but I mean, it was a very low percentage kick, I'd say. So he's 6 of 7 right now. Not only that, but I mean, his leg is huge, like Chris Blewett's, and he's been a huge weapon in sort of field position up to this point in a couple games he's played. He had 2 touchbacks last week, which is insane when you remember that these guys are kicking off from the 20-yard line. Like, I mean, that's just crazy that this dude is booting the ball like 85, 88 yards on a kickoff. And I know the wind was kind of strong last week, but still, I mean, that's just crazy impressive. So he's been a weapon for us and a huge addition. Again, not necessarily an addition where we had a need and he stepped in and filled it, or we were struggling with a kicker and we needed a new kicker, but an incredible addition where, last minute, all of a sudden we have this kind of strange situation where kicker has a serious injury and we've got to pick somebody up off the street. And he's been huge for us and sort of filling in that gap that kind of emerged a couple weeks ago. So those are my midseason awards. Those are the guys I wanted to recognize. Again, there's certainly more I could, but those are the ones that I felt like were really worthy of some recognition 5 games into the season, and certainly look forward to seeing what happens on the back half of this season here and kind of revisiting this when it's all said and done. Before I give my keys to the game for this upcoming game against the Showboats, and we talked a little bit about that, I wanted to just quickly give a sort of roster report of kind of where we're at heading into the game. So, real quick here, we did sign linebacker Malik Hall this week. You might remember Malik was with us in training camp. They added him right at the tail end of training camp. He didn't have a lot of time with the team. He ended up getting cut, but really interesting guy. He's from a smaller college. I think I want to say D2 school maybe, and spent some time in camp with the Jets last year. A young guy, just came out of college, but that didn't work out with the Jets. And super athletic, can move really well. And again, unfortunately, we had to cut him at the end of camp. But with Scooby's injury, they were looking to bring in another linebacker, and so he was, I'm sure one of the first guys they called. And so excited to hopefully get to see at some point what he can do. And then also, we didn't sign, but we did activate off of IR defensive tackle Willie Yarberry. So he went on IR, back sort of at the end of camp. Had to sit out the first 5 weeks of the season, but he is back now and he will be active for this game against the Showboats. Unfortunately, in order to bring those guys sort of on board, we did have to release defensive tackle Jalen Twyman, who's a great player, wasn't getting a lot of playing time, just with, again, how stacked that defensive line is. And I think with Willie coming back, who has a lot of history with this team and has been a key cog in sort of the defense for the last few years, is just sort of the odd man out. So unfortunately, Jalen got cut. He did get some film with us, did get some playing time and played well. So hopefully that'll give him maybe another look in the NFL, or maybe another team will pick him up. And then, kind of surprisingly, we actually released punter Colby Wadman. I'm still kind of digging and trying to get the full story on this one of what happened, but I mean, Colby was hurt, and I thought maybe he would go on IR, but he has not. I wonder, this is just me speculating. I haven't gotten any sort of confirmation about this, but I wonder if it's a situation where Colby's injury was serious enough that there was no way he was going to come back by the end of the season. And so rather than just like stick him on IR for the next, 6, 7 weeks, they just kind of came to mutual agreement and just said, well, let's just go ahead and release you. You can kind of move on from this UFL season, start rehabbing, start training, start talking to maybe NFL teams, looking at what kind of the next step is for you. Um, Rather than just sort of keep him around and keep him locked into a contract for really no reason. So I don't know if that's what happened. That's kind of me speculating. It's hard for me to believe that they just, after 1 week of seeing Drew Chrisman, who to his credit played fantastic last week and punted the ball really well. It's hard for me to believe that just 1 week of Drew Chrisman, they decided, hey, we've got this guy, Colby Wadman, who's been here for now a third year and is all USFL punter. Let's just move on from him after 1 week. So the injury seemed fairly serious in that game against DC, and then he had to kind of keep playing, which probably didn't help or probably aggravated. That's kind of what happened with Chris Blewett. So, I mean, they put Chris Blewett on IR, but again, his injury did happen a week earlier. So, again, that's kind of my guess of what's going on there. But I'm gonna have to keep digging to find out if that's really the case, or if there's something else that I'm just unaware of or missing. As far as IR, pretty much the same as last week, with the exception that Willie Arbery again came off. Deontay Brown, I believe, should be back next week. So that'll be really exciting. Alabama product, offensive lineman, was starting for us in that Arlington game, got hurt just a couple series into the game, so barely got to play. But hopefully he should be back next week, I'm hoping, and may get to play in that big game against the Battlehawks at home at Protective Stadium. And then the other guys on our Chris Blewett, Chris Jackson, Scooby Wright, don't plan on seeing them anytime soon. As far as the inactives for this week, and then we'll look at the depth chart, somewhat similar to previous last week with a couple minor changes. So Jamar still inactive. Larry Roundtree is back to being inactive, even though he had a great game last week. CJ Marable is back and been practicing, and so he is active again with Ricky Person. Isaiah Zuber is still inactive, and then Darius Harper was moved to inactive because Alex Taylor has recovered from his concussion and back in the lineup. And then on the defensive side of the ball, DeMarcus Mitchell is actually inactive, I think, to make room for Willie Yarberry, who's back. And then Malik Hall, who just joined the team. Him and Juju Hughes, who both just sort of joined the team the last week or two, are still inactive, still kind of getting acclimated. And then JoJo Tillery did get hurt last week. And I think it was fairly serious, or serious enough that he's going to miss this week for sure and be out. And potentially, another week or two more. We'll see exactly how long he's out. Fortunately, he's not on IR, which I think is a good sign. It's not something they expect him to miss at least 5 or more weeks. They're hoping maybe to be able to get him back in a couple weeks. But, coach said pretty early on in this week that he was very doubtful to be able to play against Memphis, which makes me think that it's serious enough. He might have to sit out for a couple weeks, but we'll have to continue to monitor that. As far as the depth chart, nothing too crazy that stuck out to me. Just a couple things I mentioned quick. Interestingly enough, we got Matt Caskey starting at left tackle instead of Christian DeLauro, which is a little bit new. I'd imagine those guys will probably rotate, but that was something a little different there. And then Ricky Person, I mentioned this earlier, but Ricky Person is listed as the starting running back. I think he's earned that opportunity, and CJ was out last week, and was back to practice this week, but I'm not sure at what point in the week he might have missed a day still or of practice or something like that. So Ricky's going to get the starting nod there, but otherwise the offense is about the same as previous weeks, and then defensively. Again, Willie Yarberry is active for the first time this season, but he'll be coming off the bench behind Jordan Thompson and Carlos Davis. And then um, as far as the linebacker spot, pretty much the same as last week. Really, the spot with the most movement actually was the secondary this week. So Mark Gilbert, who's been a starting corner almost every game for us, other than the one he missed with the birth of his daughter, is actually been moved to backup for this week. Although I still expect him, I'm sure he'll play a good bit. Lorenzo Burns, who also has been a starter most of the season, also has been moved to sort of a backup role. And then Ike Brown, who started at the beginning of the year but got hurt and missed several weeks, is back, but is also sort of playing a backup role. The starters are slotted to be Madre Harper, who missed the first couple games as just an inactive, but has kind of finally gotten some opportunities and apparently has really proven himself. I mean, I thought he's played great in the games that he's played and is also must be doing well in practice. And so he's worked his way into a starting job this week. Madre is awesome. If you didn't catch the interview I did with him right before the season started, go back and listen to that. He's a fantastic guy, super articulate. He's got a vlog that he's doing behind the scenes for the UFL. What's it like to be a Stallions player? So really excited to see him get his first start in this defense. And then Neville Clark, who had a great game last week, will also be starting. And then in the nickel spot, they've actually got Daniel Isom, who's mostly been working in at safety. So they're going to move him down to nickel, let him start at nickel and see what he can do there. He played corner in college, so he definitely can do it. But that leaves, because of JoJo's injury, that just leaves Kenny and AJ Thomas in the safety spot. So, of course, if necessary, they could move Isom back to safety and put Burns at nickel or move some guys around there, but a little bit thinner in the secondary just because of some of the injuries and things, and a little bit of rotation or shuffling of some guys there. So interested to see, the secondary, I think at times has been really stout and then at times has been really porous this year. So I'm interested to see how this kind of new configuration back there does against the Memphis offense. And then special teams are the same as last week. So we still got Drew Chrisman punting for us, and then Ramiz Ahmed, who we've talked about, of course. Gary Jennings and Amari Rogers will be returning kicks and punts, respectively. So let's talk about my 3 keys for the game. Honestly, it's not complicated this week. On paper, there's no reason the Stallions shouldn't win this game quite handedly, but it's always dangerous when you say that. And again, this is a league of professional football players. Can't take any weeks off. So there's a couple things I think the Stallions need to do if they want to pull out the win like they should. One is I'd like to see us get more pressure on the quarterback, on Case Cookus this week. Our defensive line has played great, and our defense played great last week, but offenses have been scheming against us to prevent us from being able to get pressure and get sacks. And the last time we really got a lot of sacks and a lot of, sort of direct pressure on the quarterback was actually a couple weeks ago when we played Memphis. So I'd love to see us kind of pick up where we left off in that game and be able to get a few more pressures and sacks on the quarterback this week against the Showboats. As far as the offense goes, my second key to the game would be just be efficient. We talked about it on here before, but when the Stallions are efficient in the red zone, the games usually aren't close. They usually win by a good bit of points. When they're not efficient in the red zone, that's when it comes down to the wire, when it ends up being a close game. Last week, they were very efficient in the first half. They went 3 for 3 on touchdowns, but they weren't in the second half. They got the ball in the red zone twice, didn't score a touchdown either time in the second half last week. Now, of course, they were up by a lot. They might have let off the gas a little bit, but, that's not really the mentality you want to have. So I'd love to see us be consistent throughout the game and efficient throughout the game, again, especially in the red zone when we're on offense, and of course not turning the ball over and things like that. And I think, I talked about this at the beginning of the week in terms of my sort of takeaways from last game, but I'd love to see us be more efficient with these conversions. Right now, we've scored 13 touchdowns and we have 5 2-point conversions. So we've only converted 38% of the time. That's just not great. One in about three is really not great. We're leaving a lot of points out there, right? So that's 8 conversions we didn't convert. If you think about that, again, at a minimum, that's 8 points. At a maximum, that's 24 points. If we went for 2, like we typically have been, that's 16 points. So let's just say that's 16 points that we've left, out there on the field by not being able to convert on these 2-point conversion plays. So that's something I'd love to see us be more efficient in as well. And then my third key is just to maintain that 1-0 mindset. This is something the Stallions have talked about since 2022 with Skip Holtz and Jamar Smith and the culture they established then. But they need to have a 1-0 mindset. Last week doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they blew Houston out. Next week doesn't matter that they play the St. Louis Battlehawks, and that's going to be a big game against two really, really hot teams right now. All that matters is the Memphis Showboats and taking care of business in the Liberty Bowl. So I think the Stallions have to go into this game with that sort of 1-0 mindset. Let's go in. Let's take care of business. Let's not think about what we've accomplished in the past. Let's not worry about what's in front of us after this game. All that matters are the 60 minutes that we're going to be on the field against the Memphis Showboats. And I think if they can maintain that mindset, that'll help them not sort of get lulled to sleep and just walk into the stadium assuming they're going to come away with the W. Again, that's not, of course, the mindset that you want to have. So we need to have the 1-0 mindset every week, and I think especially this week. So those are my 3 keys for the game. And that being said, let's turn now to the Roundup, where we'll cover all the latest UFL and Stallions news. So actually, I've got a lot of things to talk about with the Roundup this week. So I'm going to try and go through them pretty quickly. First, just wanted to mention again, there's going to be a watch party at Back 40 for this Memphis game, as there will be for every away game. Also, shout out to my guy, Corey Nash. If you've met Corey, you know who he is. If you haven't met him, he's an awesome guy, awesome person, and huge Stallions fan. He lives out in West Alabama, and he's actually arranged with Druid City Brewing in Tuscaloosa for them to open up an hour early to have the Stallions game on at Druid City. So if you live out in Tuscaloosa or West Alabama and you listen to this and you're maybe just thinking about watching the game at home, go out to Druid City. Corey's going to be there. A couple of people are going to be there, I know. And it should be it's going to be awesome to have sort of 2 watch parties happening at the same time, one in Birmingham at Back 40, one in Tuscaloosa at Druid City. We'd love for that to continue to grow and we sort of get these watch parties across the state. But definitely, show out to those and continue to support the team in that way. The TV ratings for week 5 were okay. The average was about 732,000. So the broadcast ratings dipped a little bit from previous weeks, kind of got down to that 700,000 range. The ESPN game was in the 600,000 range. I think part of that is that, we're kind of getting to that mid point of the season where it gets to be a little bit of a lull. It doesn't have the excitement of the beginning or, the excitement of the playoffs and sort of that kind of race at the end. And also, teams are starting to kind of separate themselves from the pack. So some of the games, these were the first kind of set of games that weren't very close. There was a little bit more of blowouts, like in the Birmingham game. So, that might have affected the ratings. They weren't terrible, but they certainly trended down a little bit. So hopefully that doesn't continue. The good news is that some kind of midseason reports came out. And right now, as far as local TV ratings, Birmingham is the #1 market across the entire UFL. So in terms of the average number of viewers in a given market, Birmingham was #1, St. Louis was 2, I think Michigan 3, Memphis 4, and so on. So that was great to see that. I know sometimes Birmingham has kind of gotten knocked for attendance and things like that, but I think the data is very clear that people in Birmingham are invested in this team. They're either attending in person, or if not, then they're definitely watching on TV. And so that's a really positive sign, and I think that's something obviously we want to continue. Attendance for week 5, again, was sort of okay. The average was just over 10,000, 10,067. DC and Arlington both had a little bit of an uptick from their most recent game. So that was good to see, again, at this kind of point in the year, especially with Arlington not actually, haven't won a game, but had a little bit of uptick in attendance. So that was, I think, a positive for the league. Houston and Memphis were a little bit lower than their previous games and sort of not great numbers. But that'll continue to be something the league monitors and works on and hopefully improves in the back half of the season, and if not, certainly going into next year. One exciting thing, though, was that the UFL did kind of announce a mid-season report as far as engagement online and things like that. And what's kind of fascinating is that the UFL, in terms of its social media views, has already eclipsed both the USFL and XFL's entire seasons last year at the halfway point of this year. So You can go and look on their website and see kind of the report of, all of the stats and the data about, how many people are engaging with their content on different platforms and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the report was really impressive, I will say. I think it just kind of went to show that the merger has been really helpful for sort of consolidating the spring football fan base, for bringing a lot of momentum to just one league. And that's really paying off in terms of the engagement that the UFL is getting, that it's sort of dwarfing anything that the USFL or XFL, either one, saw. By the time this season is over, the UFL is probably going to have, sort of at least double, more than double the engagement of either of those leagues. So that's certainly a good thing to see. And hopefully that's a trend that continues. As far as my power rankings heading into this week, I actually didn't have any changes from last week. So I think we're starting to see kind of the pretenders and contenders sort of separate themselves. I've still got Stallions 1, Battlehawks 2, Brahmas 3. Those seem to be definitely kind of the top three teams in the league. Michigan 4, DC 5. I like Michigan a little bit better than DC, although I think both of those teams are sort of trying to, kind of push themselves up into that sort of upper echelon, but they're maybe not quite there yet. But the Panthers have a little bit easier path in terms of their conference and making the playoffs. And, at their best, I think I've seen some good flashes from them that I haven't necessarily seen from DC. And then towards the bottom of the pack, you've got Houston, Memphis, and Arlington, who none of which I think are bad teams, but all of which are struggling and really having to find ways to stay in games right now. And as far as predictions for this week, I'm just going to go with my power rankings there. I tried to pick some upsets last week. I've been trying to kind of go with my gut, and that just really hasn't been paying off for me. And so I'm going to stop doubting the teams that I've been doubting that are winning. I'm going to stop believing in the teams that I was believing in that aren't winning. And so, I'm going to take Birmingham over Memphis. I'm going to take St. Louis over Houston. I'm going to take Michigan over Arlington, and I'm going to take San Antonio over DC. Don't expect the Birmingham game to be particularly close. I mean, if I had to guess a score, I'd probably say something like 30-13. St. Louis, Houston, same thing. I think that one could be kind of rough. I'd probably go with that one, something like 34-10. Michigan and Arlington, I think Michigan should be able to handle them pretty, soundly, but that is also one that I mean, I don't know. I keep kind of thinking Arlington's going to pull out their first win, but it doesn't happen. So I'm going to go with Michigan, but it might be a little bit closer than maybe we expect. So I'll say something like, 20 to 16, and then San Antonio over DC. That's the one that, again, I'm not completely sold on San Antonio. I still think DC has some potential, even though they're certainly squandering up to this point. So I'm going to go with San Antonio. I'm not going to sleep on them or doubt them anymore. But I don't know that it'll be a huge blowout. I'll maybe say something like San Antonio wins 27-19. Just so you know, week 7, so the following week after this one, when we play St. Louis at home at 3 p.m. at Protective Stadium, AJ McCarron will be back, and it will be Braves Day. So Blooper will be there. They're going to have some giveaways, some Braves, kind of promotional content. So if you're either a Stallions fan, a Braves fan, an AJ McCarron or Alabama football fan, or you just love good football and want to see the two best teams in this league face off at Protective Stadium, those are all fantastic reasons to come. Or if you just like a good time and you want to hang out before the game, tailgate, have fun, $10 tickets, you can't really beat that deal. So definitely make plans to be there at Protective Stadium for that game. Let your friends know, again, if they're Alabama fans, if they're Braves fans, Stallions fans, like, we need everybody at this game. There's no reason we shouldn't have 15 to 20,000 people at this game, with all these sort of factors that are at play. So make sure you go ahead and put that on your schedule for May 11th at 3 p.m. There are 3 more remaining home games. So May 11th, May 18th, and then I think it's June 1st, I want to say. So not May 25th, but the following week after that, the final week of the regular season. I believe it's June 1st. It might be June 1st or 2nd. But there are 3 remaining home games, and the Stallions are selling ticket packages for those 3 games. So if you maybe only bought, a couple single game tickets to the beginning of the year, you're kind of filling it out, deciding what you want to do. If you want to buy a package of tickets for the remainder of the season, definitely make sure you do that. And let's definitely try to pack out Protector for these last couple of home games that we've got. And then one final sort of fun piece of information. or I guess not really fun, but non-Stallions, at least this season related piece of information, kind of just something different, is that former MVP quarterback Alex Magoo was announced is actually going to be moving to wide receiver with Green Bay. So I kind of caught wind of this when Alex was in town for the opener a couple weeks back. He mentioned that he might be moving to a new position, and I assumed it would either be receiver or tight end or something like that. So I kind of knew that it was coming, but still a little disappointing for me. Again, having watched Alex play quarterback for the Stallions, having seen how dominant he was, how incredible of a player he was in Skip Holtz's offense, I know that he has what it takes to play quarterback at the NFL level, and I would love to see him get that opportunity. At the same time, I understand that he's not in control of those decisions, and he obviously wants to be in the NFL because that's where he belongs, and he's got a different opportunity. It might not be the opportunity maybe he wanted or expected, but he's got an opportunity, and you got to sort of take that and run with it. So certainly we'll be cheering for him, wishing him the best. Hopefully it does work out. Hopefully we get to see him playing on Sundays as a receiver. Or if not, if it doesn't work out and he gets cut, hopefully he gets picked up by another team where he can go and get the chance to prove that he can play quarterback at that level. So just thought everybody should know that. And of course, we always take advantage of any chance we get to talk about Alex Magoo on this show. So that's going to do it for the show this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it's a little late. It's just cutting it close before the game here, but hopefully it was worth the wait and you enjoyed the show. Hopefully you enjoyed reflecting back on the halfway point of the season and getting ready for this sort of home stretch that is coming down the pipe. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the game today against the Memphis Showboats. Hopefully come away with the W, and we'll be here to break it down on Monday morning. Look forward to seeing you back then.